Some stories inspire us, others leave us speechless, but among every story ever told, there is one that Allah Himself describes as the best of stories, not because it is filled with kings or battles or unimaginable wealth, but because it speaks to every human heart. It's a story about love, betrayal, patience, forgiveness, and a trust in Allah that never wavered. It begins with the dream of a young boy, a dream so extraordinary that it would shape the course of his entire life. Yet, before that dream could become reality, he would lose almost everything. He would be betrayed by the very people who should have protected him, thrown into the darkness of an abandoned well, sold as a slave in a foreign land, falsely accused of a crime he never committed, and forgotten behind the walls of a prison. At every stage, it seemed as though his story was falling apart, but what looked like a series of tragedies was, in reality, Allah's plan unfolding with perfect wisdom. Long before Egypt knew his name, long before he stood in the halls of power, there was simply a young boy living among his family in the land of Canaan. His name was Yusuf. He was the beloved son of Prophet Yaqub, a prophet of Allah, and the grandson of Prophet Ishaq, whose lineage traced back to Prophet Ibrahim. From an early age, Yusuf was known for his gentle nature, honesty, and remarkable character. There was a light in him that people noticed, even before they understood why. His father loved all of his children, but there was something about Yusuf, a purity, a sincerity, a heart that naturally drew people toward him. Not everyone, however, welcomed that closeness. Among his brothers, a quiet feeling had already begun to grow. At first, it was only a thought. Then, it became comparison. And before long, comparison turned into jealousy, a jealousy that would slowly consume their hearts. Long before Yusuf ever realized he was in danger. But Allah was about to show this young boy a glimpse of a future unlike anything he could have imagined. One peaceful night, as the stars stretched across the silent sky, Yusuf saw a dream so vivid that it felt more real than sleep itself. He saw 11 stars, the sun, and the moon, all bowing before him. When morning arrived, he hurried to his father, his voice filled with wonder. "Oh, my dear father, indeed I saw 11 stars, and the sun and the moon. I saw them prostrating to me." The moment Yaqub heard those words, his expression changed. This was no ordinary dream. For prophets, true dreams were a form of revelation from Allah. Yaqub understood that Allah was showing his son a promise of honor, a future filled with responsibility, and a position unlike any other. But with every great blessing comes a great test. Looking into his son's eyes, Yaqub gently advised him, "My son, do not relate your vision to your brothers, or they will plot against you. Surely Satan is a clear enemy to mankind." The dream had been revealed, but before Allah's promise could be fulfilled, the journey toward it would begin with betrayal. Jealousy rarely appears all at once. It grows quietly, a passing thought, a comparison, a feeling that someone else has been given more. If left unchecked, it begins to consume the heart. That is exactly what happened to the brothers of Yusuf. Every time they saw their father showing love to Yusuf, their resentment grew. Instead of asking, "How can we become better?" they asked, "Why does he love Yusuf more than us?" Their focus shifted from improving themselves to removing the one they blamed for their unhappiness. One day, away from their father's sight, the brothers gathered. What began as a conversation soon became a conspiracy. Hatred had now reached a point. where they were willing to sacrifice their own brother for the attention of their father. But even in the middle of that darkness, one of the brothers said, "Do not kill Yusuf. Throw him into the bottom of a well. A passing caravan may pick him up if you are determined to do something." To them, it seemed like the perfect solution. Yusuf would disappear. No one would suspect them, and eventually, their father's love would belong to them alone. What they failed to realize was that they were making plans, while Allah was writing destiny. The next morning, they approached Prophet Yaqub with smiles on their faces and innocence in their voices. "Father, why don't you trust us with Yusuf? Let him come with us tomorrow. We'll let him play. We'll take care of him." Every word was carefully chosen, every smile carefully rehearsed. But Yaqub felt something, a heaviness in his heart. He replied, "Indeed, it saddens me that you should take him away, and I fear that a wolf may eat him while you are careless of him." His concern wasn't only about a wolf, it was the instinct of a father who sensed that something was wrong. The brothers quickly answered, "If a wolf were to eat him while we are a strong group, then we would truly be losers." They sounded convincing, perhaps too convincing. Eventually, with trust in Allah, Yaqub allowed Yusuf to go. He watched his beloved son walk away with his brothers, never imagining that this farewell would become one of the most heartbreaking moments of his life far from home. The laughter slowly faded, the friendly conversations disappeared, the warmth of brotherhood turned into silence. Yusuf, who had left home feeling safe, began to notice something had changed. The brothers surrounded him. Their expressions were no longer familiar. Before he could understand what was happening, they grabbed him, stripped him of his outer garment, and dragged him toward an abandoned well. Hidden deep within the desert, its walls were steep, its depths swallowed the light. Looking down into the darkness, Yusuf must have realized that this was no accident. This was the plan. Without mercy, they pushed him over the edge. The child who had done nothing wrong disappeared into the darkness below. The sound of his fall echoed through the empty well before silence returned. Above, the brothers looked down, believing they had erased Yusuf from their lives forever. His brothers walked away, certain their secret would remain buried forever. But beyond the horizon, a caravan was already making its way across the desert. They thought the well was the end of Yusuf's story. In reality, it was the place where Allah's plan had only just begun. As evening settled over the desert, the brothers were already making their way home. Behind them, the abandoned well stood silent. But Allah had not abandoned Yusuf. At the very moment hope seemed lost, a caravan traveling across the trade routes between Canaan and Egypt stopped nearby. They were searching for one thing: water. One of the travelers lowered his bucket into the well, expecting to draw up water from its depths. Instead, the rope became unexpectedly heavy. Slowly, he pulled it upward. As the bucket reached the surface, the man froze. Holding onto the rope was a young boy. Startled, he called out to the others, "What good news! Here is a boy!" To the caravan, Yusuf was an unexpected discovery. To Allah, this was the next step in a plan that had been unfolding long before the brothers' jealousy ever took root. The travelers quietly took Yusuf with them, seeing him not as a child in need, but as merchandise. The beloved son of a prophet was carried across the desert, not as a prince, but as a slave. What appeared to be another tragedy was quietly guiding him toward the place where Allah intended him to be. Days later, the towering city of Egypt came into view. Its grand buildings, bustling markets, and magnificent palaces stood in sharp contrast to the quiet valleys of Canaan. In the crowded slave market, potential buyers examined those being sold. Then, one of the highest-ranking officials in Egypt arrived, Al-Aziz. As he looked at Yusuf, he saw something others did not merely a slave, but a child with remarkable character. He purchased Yusuf, and when he returned home, he said to his wife, "Make his stay honorable. Perhaps he may benefit us." or we may adopt him as a son. What an extraordinary turn of events. The brothers had wanted to remove him from their father's love. Instead, Allah placed him under the protection of one of the most influential families in the land. Years passed. The frightened child from the well became a young man admired for his wisdom, his dignity, and his extraordinary character. His appearance was striking, his manners were impeccable, his honesty earned the trust of everyone around him. Life, at last, seemed to be becoming easier. But sometimes, the greatest tests do not come during hardship. They come when life appears comfortable. Behind the walls of the palace, another trial was quietly approaching. And unlike the well, this was a test. He could not escape simply by running away. Years had passed. The frightened boy who had once been pulled from the depths of a well had grown into a man admired throughout the household of Al-Aziz. Yet sometimes the greatest tests come, not when we have nothing, but when everything seems to be going well. The wife of Al-Aziz became captivated by Yusuf's remarkable beauty and character. One day she closed every door of the palace. Then she called Yusuf toward her. For many people, this would have been the perfect opportunity. No one would ever know. But Yusuf knew something far greater than anyone else in that room. Allah was watching. He didn't negotiate. He didn't delay. He didn't entertain the temptation. His very first response was to seek the protection of Allah. Realizing Yusuf would never betray his Lord, she moved toward him. Yusuf immediately turned and ran toward the exit. As he reached the door, she grabbed hold of his shirt, tearing it from behind. At that exact moment, the door opened. Standing before them was her husband, Al-Aziz. In an instant, the truth was turned upside down. To protect herself, she accused Yusuf. A lie, spoken confidently, designed to destroy the reputation of an innocent man. Yusuf calmly replied, "It was she who tried to seduce me." There were no witnesses, only two conflicting stories. Then Allah caused evidence to emerge from within the household itself. A member of her family suggested something remarkably simple. If Yusuf's shirt is torn from the front, then she is telling the truth. But if it is torn from the back, then he is truthful. The shirt was examined. It was torn from behind. The evidence spoke for itself. Al-Aziz realized the truth. Then he told Yusuf, "Ignore this matter." It seemed that justice had finally prevailed, but the trial was not over. The wife of Al-Aziz then declared before everyone, "This is the one you blamed me for, and if he does not do what I command him, he will surely be imprisoned." He raised his hands in dua and said, "My Lord, prison is more beloved to me than what they invite me to. Unless you turn their plot away from me, I may incline toward them and become one of the ignorant." Allah accepted his sincere prayer, but the answer was not what anyone expected. Instead of walking free, Yusuf was sent to prison. To the world, it looked like another injustice, another door closing forever. But Allah was opening a door no one else could yet see. Even there, his character never changed. Instead, he continued to worship his Lord, treat people with kindness, and speak with honesty. One day, two prisoners approached Yusuf. Each had seen a dream that left them searching for answers. One said, "I saw myself pressing grapes into wine." The other said, "I saw birds eating bread from a basket I was carrying on my head." Both asked the same question, "Can you tell us what these dreams mean?" By Allah's permission, Yusuf explained the dreams. To the first man, he said, "You will be released and return to serving the king." To the second, he delivered difficult news. "You will be executed, and birds will eat from your head," exactly as Allah had revealed to him. Before the first prisoner left, Yusuf made a simple request: "Mention me before your king." Then, one night, the king of Egypt saw a dream unlike any he had ever experienced. 7 healthy cows being eaten by 7 thin cows, 7 green ears of grain and 7 dry ones. The dream disturbed him. He gathered the wisest advisors in his kingdom, yet no one could explain it. At that moment, the former prisoner suddenly remembered, "I know someone who can explain dreams." But Yusuf would make a decision that revealed the extraordinary integrity of a prophet. Instead of rushing toward freedom, he insisted that the truth must first be made clear, and Allah was about to raise Yusuf higher than anyone could have imagined. As we come to the end of Yusuf's story, it's easy to admire how beautifully everything came together. The dream was fulfilled, his innocence was proven, his family was reunited, his parents were honored, and the young boy who had once been abandoned in a well became one of the most respected leaders in Egypt. Because Yusuf didn't become who he was in the palace, he became who he was in the well, in slavery, in temptation, in prison. Those weren't interruptions to Allah's plan. They were Allah's plan. How often do we ask Allah for something, only to feel disappointed when it doesn't happen? The story of Yusuf reminds us that Allah's silence is not His absence. It's a reminder for every believer that Allah is always in control, even when our lives feel out of control. So if you're waiting for your own prayers to be answered, if you're carrying a pain no one else understands, or if you're wondering why life has taken a path you never expected, remember Yusuf, because when Allah writes your story, every chapter has a purpose. Because the greatest lesson from Yusuf isn't that dreams come true, it's that Allah's promise always comes true in His perfect time. If this story touched your heart, don't let it end with you. Share it with someone who may be struggling to trust Allah's plan, and we'd love to hear from you in the comments. Which moment from the story of Yusuf strengthened your trust in Allah the most? If you're passionate about authentic Islamic stories that strengthen faith, then subscribe to Faithverse and join us on this journey. Until our next story, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.